After 15 rounds of voting, the House of Representatives finally has a speaker, meaning the House can actually do some work. But with all the fractures revealed this week, there are serious concerns about how much work will get done. And with the U.S., Canada's closest neighbor and biggest trading partner, there are questions too about what it means for this country. Keeping a very close eye on what's happening is Canada's ambassador to the United States, Kirsten Hillman, and I spoke with her on Friday. Ambassador Hillman joins me from our embassy there in Washington. Ambassador, nice to see you.
Great to see you.
I want to start with what's happening there behind you in Congress and this, what should be a fairly simple task of trying to name a Speaker of the House. What do the antics tell you about how difficult it may be to work with Congress, a split Congress going forward?
Yeah, well, you know, I think what we're seeing here is a realignment in the Republican Party, sort of a settling in of the Republican Party and its new leadership role in the House of Representatives. We often think it's a two-party system that Republicans have one view as a whole, but they don't, right? They represent a wide range of different kinds of perspectives. And with a new mix of individuals in the House and with the prospect of electing a new leader, they are going through an adjustment phase and trying to figure out what they want to, who they want to have lead them, and what their priorities are. So I think it is obviously quite gripping to watch, but I think it's not unpredictable that it's taking them a bit of time to settle in. In terms of us working with them. Yeah. Our job always down here in Washington and with our network across the country is to build relationships with everyone, with Republicans, with Democrats, with governors, with local lawmakers, because that's how we get stuff done at the local level and across parties and regions.
And I want to talk to you a little bit more about how you're doing that or who you're talking to, but just to get back to the political uncertainty, because it is gripping to watch, certainly, but it also means that it can be more difficult or could be more difficult in the future to engage with people or to get things done, both domestically and internationally. How are you assessing what that might look like in the months ahead?
Well, I think it's too soon to tell. I think that we have they have a divided Congress here behind me, with the Senate being held by the Democrats and the House of Representatives being held by the Republicans. So inevitably, it's going to be harder for Congress to pass legislation no matter what. And if you add to that within the House, as I say, this sort of realigning of the Republican Party, there are many layers of I suppose, settling in that are going to take place. But for Canada, oftentimes the issues that matter most to us are very local and specific. And therefore, we work with Republicans, we work with Democrats, we work with, as I say, local governments and governors, because they are interested in the issues that matter to their constituencies. And issues that matter to the constituencies tend to also be the issues that matter to Canadians. So there is less of a partisan filter over what we do than people might expect.
Okay. I want to move on to trade and the Inflation Reduction Act specifically, which, as you know, many people in this country are seeing as a potential threat to the Canadian electric vehicle industry because there's so much money involved, and also it promises to offer preferential treatment to American companies. We do have some sources. We've been reporting that companies are already starting to look away from Canada because of that. What are your concerns about how this will impact Canada? What are you doing behind the scenes, if anything, to try and lessen the impact?
So I think something really important to point out is that the Inflation Reduction Act, it's true, it's a mammoth spending bill on important green technologies and accelerating those here in the United States, but it also has programs that are available for access to Canadian companies for investments in Canada. And I am meeting with and discussing with a number of Canadian companies that are here or coming here to see us, how they can access that money, and I'm being told that they are in conversations with the American government on that. So there is a lot of investment being made in the United States, but it doesn't preclude investment in Canada and even Canadians accessing some of that money, which I think is very interesting, not just under the IRA, but also in the CHIPS Act, which is the semiconductor legislation. So first point is investment in green technologies everywhere is important because demand is going to outstrip supply for a long time to come. And the faster we can accelerate what needs to happen, the better for our planet and for our people. Canada has been investing in this space for a very long time, and we therefore have a pretty vibrant ecosystem. The U.S. is seeking to create that vibrant ecosystem themselves. And in my experience, which is fairly long in the Canada-U.S. trade space, when an industry develops and grows in the United States, it always helps us develop and grow that industry in Canada because we are so deeply integrated. So yes, we need to be watchful. Yes, we always need to be on the lookout for protectionism, but the IRA also recognizes Canada as a very specific and particular partner in the area of critical minerals, battery technology, and electric vehicle manufacturing. So I'm positive about the whole endeavor.
So the preferential treatment concern to you is secondary, is not a real concern? Can you characterize for me what it is for you then?
I think we always need to be vigilant around protectionism in the United States. I think that we need to continue to assess how these particular investments play out. Right. But we have an excellent value proposition in Canada. We are attracting enormous investment in Canada from Americans and from around the world in our technologies, in our manufacturing sector, in the green tech space. So I am very confident about our own ability to be extremely competitive in the space. And one of my goals for the year to come, frankly, is to make sure that we work with Americans and the American government as much as we can to create an ecosystem where we're supporting each other and advancing this vibrant and crucial sector of our economies together and not trying to outcompete each other. And I know that the U.S. administration is interested in that too. We have to dig into what that means in precise terms.
I am sure that will come up at the North American Leaders Summit this coming week, and when the President and the Prime Minister sit down and speak directly to one another. I want to ask you more specifically about another potential bilat. As you know, the President has said he will come and visit Canada. We have heard rumblings that could happen in this coming year. Is that something that's still on the table, and does that seem to be important to the White House?
Yes, so this is something that I do talk to the White House about fairly regularly, and I know from them, in recent conversations in the recent weeks, that the President is very eager to come to Canada. We are very eager to welcome him once that date is set. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully it will happen soon.
What is the sort of priority for this government when it sits down with the President this week? In I assume what might be a bit of a longer conversation because it's only 3 countries gathering for these meetings.
Right. So in the NOWS discussions, I think that the Prime Minister's priority in particular is to focus on economic growth and strengthening the Canada-U.S. Mexico proposition. I think it's really interesting to note that Canada-U.S. Mexico trade this past year hit record levels. We're 2 years out of the adoption of the new NAFTA, the CUSMA, the Canada-U.S. Mexico Trade Agreement, and we are seeing our trilateral relationship economically stronger than ever before. So that is fantastic, but we can't take these things for granted, right? We have to look at where that strength is coming from, build on that strength, and one of the things that we're seeing, given the geopolitics of the time, Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, is that we need to be working to be self-sufficient with our closest allies and friends. And Canada, U.S. and Mexico are deeply aligned and historically very close allies and friends. So I think the Prime Minister is going to want to talk about that, about inclusive growth, about supply chains, about building on this success, and about making sure we propel ourselves forward.
Just one last question on the former president, Donald Trump, who has announced, of course, that he is going to run again. I understand the Canadian government is not talking about it openly, but I do wonder whether there is any engagement with him and his team or Republicans who support him, given the possibility that he could become president again and that he was a fairly large headache for this country when he was.
So I would say that the 2024 elections are a long way out. Right now and in the next, year, midterm, between now and say next year, our focus is on really getting to know the folks that have been elected here. And that's everyone that we need to be working with in order to advance Canadian interests. One of the things that's really clear is that when you want to or need to call upon someone to help you solve a problem or advance a priority, it's very important to already have a relationship with that person. So what we do methodically and systematically here in Washington and across the country is we get to know the lawmakers of the land. And they, as referring back to the beginning of our conversation, talking about what's happening on the Hill, they come in all sorts of different perspectives. But those perspectives are all elected officials who we may well need to work with in the future. And so our priority is to get to know and build linkages with everyone.
Okay, Ambassador, always good of you to make the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.